Welcome everyone. Today we're going to talk about cutting vinyl out. So when we cut vinyl out, what we're doing is we have a little knife in the machine. It goes around and it follows what we call a cut line. And then what you're going to do is remove the outside portion, and what you're left with is your adhesive vinyl sticker. So this is how we do graphics for cars, for doors, for things like that. And it's a pretty simple process. So I'm going to show you in Illustrator how to go about setting up the cut line. So first things first, I have a practice file here that I've made to show you some different things. But before we get to this, we need to get a certain set of swatches. And these are called our Roland Versaworks swatches. So to get those, I have a link inside of my course for digital design resources. You're going to go ahead, open this up. Now, depending what year we look at this, it may have changed some, but we're going to scroll down here to resources, and underneath design templates is where I always keep the Roland swatches. So click there, you'll notice it's going to open up my Creative Cloud shared file here, and Roland swatches. And now you'll notice I have Roland Versaworks and Roland Versaworks. I have two different versions of the file, because we can make cut lines in both Illustrator and in InDesign. It has to be vector, and I'll show you why here in a little bit. So we're going to go ahead, we're going to download the AI version. So just click here, say download, and in my downloads, you guys will see here in a minute that I have that file ready to go. So now let's jump over to Illustrator and let's start talking about just the basics of cutting. So to set up cutting, let's say I wanted to cut out these three shapes. All I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my shape, I'm going to turn on the stroke, and for the stroke here, I'm going to open a different swatch. You know what? Let me expand this. So my Roland swatch is not in here yet, so what I'm going to do is click here, the three lines. I'm going to say Open Swatch Library, and I'm going to go to Other Library. And when I do that, I can load any file I want and pull in its swatches. In this case, we're going to load that file that I just downloaded. So go to my downloads, grab that file. And here are my VersaWorks swatches. The one I need is this one called Cut Contour. These other ones are for different items we can do with the machine. I don't have these options, but if we had different inks, we could do it. So we're just going to concern ourselves with what we call Cut Contour. When I click this, you're going to notice I get a funky magenta color for my stroke. And if you look at my swatches, I have a spot color named Cut Contour. Now do not change this swatch. It needs to be a spot color, and it needs to have that exact cut contour with the capital C's for it to work. The other thing we need to do to make sure this works is we have to set our stroke to a 0.25. So for me, that shape right there is ready to cut. So when I go to the vinyl printer, it's going to cut out that shape, and I'm going to get a square left behind. Same idea for these two shapes. I could flip it over, turn on the cut contour, and make it 0.25. So if I were to send this right now to the vinyl cutter, it would load up the paper, and it would cut those shapes, and I could then weed it out and make it happen. Now, cutting lines is a little bit different. So the idea here is the knife is following that red or that magenta line. So if I go to a line and I add my cut contour and I make it 0.25, I'm not actually getting a shape from here. I'm just going to get just a solid line cut out. There's nothing I can do with that. It's just a solid line. So we have to change how we look at lines. If you look at this line, it's really just a skinny rectangle. So we need to convert our lines or our strokes to actual shapes. So there is a trick in Illustrator to convert these. So what you're going to do is you're going to select your lines, you're going to go up to Object, and you're going to choose Expand. When we choose Expand, we're expanding both the fill and the stroke. And now what I'm left with is a solid skinny rectangle that I can now apply my 0.25 stroke. So if I sent this through the cutting machine right now, I would end up with a nice thin skinny line that it just cut out. So let's go ahead and let's take this a little bit further. Overlapping objects. So obviously in Illustrator, we don't just work with lines. Sometimes we do different objects. So in this case, I built a simple house. So I have a triangle and a box. So I'm going to go ahead and get the cut line set on this one. Let me get it to 0.25. Now, I hope you see the issue that's happening here. We have two shapes overlapping. If I were to cut this, I would end up with this weird rectangle part in the middle of my sticker. So if you're going to do overlapping shapes, we need to do something else. In this case, let me go back a few steps here. In this case, before I would set my stroke, I would go ahead, I would grab my two, and I would use my pathfinder function, and I would unite them. That gives me one solid shape, which I can then do my cut line around. See how that looks correct? Same idea for this one. So I have a little home, I have a nice little roof, and I have my home for sale. Now in this one, is it grouped? Let me ungroup it if it is. Nope, I did a solid shape and I put that there. And this one, I can probably get by with just setting my stroke. Yep, I can get by with just setting the stroke on this one because I'm cutting out a solid hole over a big shape. So this to me would cut out just fine. I could pull out each individual letter and I could pull out that. This shape here, again, it's a stroke, so we'd have to expand our appearance, or expand appearance, they both work. Set our stroke, and then set our cut contour to 0.25. So that would give me a line cut. So I hope you're starting to see that when we're doing these, we have to really be thinking, how am I going to cut these items out? Now for the next one, something I didn't mention, I want to mention, when we're doing lines, you should really make 3-point your minimum. Any smaller than that, the machine just doesn't do a good job of cutting, so we should stick to that 3-point minimum. Now we're going to talk about text. So text, you should really keep it to a 24-point minimum. Much below that, and it gets too small. Now with sans serif, I've seen it down to 18, and we can do it. Much below that, it gets really difficult. But text works the same way. We can flip it over. We can add our stroke, 0.25. Sans serif text, same with serif text. We can do the same. 0.25. So both of these would cut fine. With the serif text, you notice there's definitely going to be some areas here where there might be issues. Now, we're going to talk the cursive text. Any overlapping text, we have to deal with. It doesn't work the way you think it should work. So let's go ahead and let me just visually show you what's going to happen. Let's get my stroke set. There we go. As we go into this, the way cursive and overlapping text are designed, you'll see how you get the overlapping shapes here. So when we send these through the vinyl cutter, it is going to cut and you're going to get some real ugly pieces inside of here. So we need to fix these items before we send it to cut. So for cursive text, let's step back 2 steps, 3 steps. What I'm going to do with cursive text first is I am going to create an outline. So when I create outlines, it converts the text to an actual vector object. Then I'm going to pathfind it. And I'm going to pathfind it to get rid of all these overlapping areas. So as I pathfind it, now I can set it correctly, get it to 0.25, and now I have a set of cursive text that is ready to be cut. So fair warning, if you're going to use any overlapping fonts, you got to fix that. So let's start talking about simplifying illustrations. So here I have my food truck, and I've colored the parts gray here because I just want you to see what we're cutting out. What the goal is to simplify is you want to get it down to a single object with a single fill, in this case a single black fill. That way we can quickly, easily turn on our cut lines and set this to 0.25. So that I know would cut the truck perfectly. So our goal, we're going to try to get to that. So first, we need to start cutting items out. So you'll notice in this one I have different shapes. See how they're just drawn over that big black background? So again, we're going to really start using our Pathfinder functions to make this happen. So for my gray background here, I might select that, and I might select my truck piece, and I might try minusing the front. There we go. So I've just cut out a good bit right there. And I'm going to walk around to my shapes, and I'm going to start minusing. Because the idea is, whoops, notice I have an issue there I'll have to deal with. Let's see if I can do this one. Boop, yep. So this one, if you notice underneath, when I tried to cut him out, it's showing that there. So there's times where I might need to duplicate items, so I might Control-C, Control-F to paste in front, and we'll cut him out. And then I'll grab this guy and I'll cut him out of this shape too. There we go. Oops, got to send some items to the back. So real simple, I'm just running through and I'm cutting my shapes out of these, and I'm working with stacking. And the goal is to get down to where I can see through and only have black fills left. Yep, I gotta send it back some. There we go. Let's see if we can get these items. Oop, not him. Him. Out of that. There we go. Send him back again. Let's do that one more time. And I believe, select that. Ooh, that didn't work. Wrong one. You and you. Nope. I have something weird happening here. I believe, yep, it's a stroke, so I would actually have to expand this. Object, expand. But let's make sure I'm getting that tire. Nope, still something weird. I'll have to come back to that one. Let's see what's happening here. So we're going to keep working with this tire here, and we're going to try to figure out what's going on. I've expanded this, and I think I have a couple different items happening here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to merge that shape together, send it back, and I'm going to keep kind of experimenting. How do I get this? That's not what I want. I need to figure out how to get my shape cut out of my other shape. And this is part of the reason why I do this, is to show you that this can be a very frustrating process at times. And you guys are noticing me, you're probably snickering, oh, Mr. Smalling's suffering here. And I am, but I will figure out what is going on here. So I have a path and I have a compound path, so I might try a direct select tool, see if that works. There we go. Sometimes we'll jump down to the direct select tool and we'll make it happen. Let me send that back, grab this guy, send that back. There we go. So my truck is almost perfect. I'm going to select everything here and I'm going to try to merge them all together or unite them all. And now I have one truck with a solid black fill where I can quickly flip it over. And I know if I send this through the vinyl cutter, it would work correctly. Here we go, 0.25. That truck would be ready to go, ready to cut. Now, let's take this to the last level. We're getting ready. We're going to actually vinyl cut a logo, a shirt, an apron, whatever we want to do, or a sticker. So first things first, you always got to start working at the size you plan on making your object. So I'm going to grab my artboard tool and I'm going to draw a new box here. And I already know my size. I want this to be 5 by 5 inches. I just think it's a good size to start working with for some items. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to center these. So we already know how to do the truck. We've already simplified the truck, so I'm just going to get him set. And we're going to pretend that I'm doing some funky things with my text. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my text behind these shapes. And I'm going to do what's called an envelope distort. So I'm going to go Object, Envelope Distort, Make with Top Object. So I'm going to get my text just to look kind of funky with my truck. I'll do that again. make with top object. And again, I need to expand. And again, being that it's cursive, you'll see the overlaps. I'll need to pathfind it. And now I can give it my final stroke, 0.25. And there we go. I have a simple logo, black and white, that I'm going to send to the vinyl cutter. And then from there, I would have to take this and sit down and actually weed it all out to get to a final sticker or transfer or something like that. So that is the steps to doing cut vinyl. The big things to remember: lines, try to keep them above 3 point. If they're going to a sharp point, that's fine, but you really want to keep that thickness around 3. Remember, for text, 24 points should be the minimum. So keep that in mind. Don't get things really small. It'll be really hard to deal with. So I hope this helped you. Please let me know if you need anything else.